The air was a currency, and everyone was trying to spend it at once. A thick, humid press of bodies, all vying for a sliver of attention, a single quote that could define the day. In the center of this storm, she stood, poised and sharp, a lighthouse in a chaotic sea of shouting reporters. And then a voice, younger than the rest, cut through the noise. It wasn't a shout. It was a question. For a moment, the storm paused. And the lighthouse spoke, not with light, but with 2 words of pure, cold dismissal. Sit down. The command sliced through the air, sharp as glass. It was meant to be an execution. A swift, public end to a moment of unsanctioned inquiry. It was meant to make a man small, to erase him from the conversation he dared to enter. But it failed. Because in that cold, sterile silence that followed, something else happened. An ember of defiance, banked and waiting, didn't just survive. It ignited a fire that would scorch the internet and remind millions of a forgotten truth. What he did next wasn't just a comeback. It was a resurrection. Imagine it. Feel it. The heat from the camera lights on your skin, hot and unforgiving. The weight of 100 pairs of eyes, all focused on you, waiting. The sound of your own heart, a frantic drum against the sudden, shocking silence. Your professionalism, your purpose, your very identity has just been publicly challenged, reduced to a 2-word command meant to put you in your place. In this stretched out, infinite second, the world holds its breath, and you face a choice that will define you. Do you obey? Do you shrink back into the crowd, the heat rising in your cheeks, the unspoken words dying on your tongue? Or do you access something deeper? A reserve of strength you didn't know you had? Do you stand your ground, not with anger, but with an unshakable calm that is, in itself, the most powerful answer? His choice would become a lesson in power, echoing far, far beyond the suffocating confines of that room. He chose to stand. To understand the sheer force of that moment, you have to understand the 2 worlds that were destined to collide on that day. You have to understand the architect of the message and the humble seeker of the truth. First, there was Karoline Leavitt. To see her was to see ambition made manifest. She was a product of the modern political crucible, forged in the relentless 24-hour news cycle, a world where hesitation is death and control is paramount. Her rise had been meteoric, a testament to her sharp instincts and an unwavering, assertive communication style that was both her armor and her weapon. She didn't just enter a room, she occupied it, projecting an aura of unflappable command. On any given day, her preparation was a ritual. The talking points, memorized, internalized, ready to be deployed with surgical precision. The outfit, a carefully chosen uniform of professional severity. The mindset, a fortress. In her world, a press gaggle wasn't a conversation, it was a battlefield. It was a place of narrative warfare, where every question was a potential landmine, every reporter a potential adversary. Her job wasn't to answer, but to manage. To deflect, to pivot, to control the flow of information with an iron will. She saw the world in terms of messaging, of optics, of dominance. An unscheduled question from an unknown face wasn't an opportunity for dialogue, it was an anomaly to be neutralized. A deviation from the script. When she looked out at the sea of faces, she didn't see individual journalists with individual stories. She saw a collective, a potential threat to the narrative she was paid to protect. Her power was external, projected, a function of her title and her proximity to the center of the political universe. It was a power that demanded compliance, that expected the world to bend to its will. And for the most part, it did. Then, there was the other world. The world of Nathan Traoré. His story wasn't one of meteoric rises or political battlefields. It was quieter, more deliberate, built on a foundation of different principles. Perhaps he was the kind of young man who grew up watching the evening news not with cynicism, but with a quiet sense of wonder. The kind of person who believed in the power of a well-asked question, who saw journalism not as a path to fame, but as a public service, a sacred trust. His journey to that crowded room wasn't paved with power lunches and strategic alliances. It was paved with late nights in the library, with meticulously researched notes, with the quiet, often thankless, work of trying to understand the world in all its complexity. Imagine his morning. Not a review of strategic talking points, but a review of facts. Not the selection of a power suit, but the simple act of putting on a shirt and tie, a quiet armor of professionalism. In his mind, a single, well-formulated question hummed. A question he believed the public deserved an answer to. He wasn't there to grandstand. He wasn't there to become the story. He was there to do a job he took seriously. He was, in that moment, the embodiment of 1,000 other young, aspiring journalists, filled with a potent mixture of nervous energy and profound purpose. He represented the belief that anyone, regardless of their status or the size of their platform, had the right to seek the truth and hold power to account. His power wasn't external. It was internal, forged in conviction, rooted in the dignity of his work. He was not a threat to be neutralized. He was a citizen participating in the democratic process in the most fundamental way. He was David, not yet knowing he was about to face Goliath. He walked into that room not as an adversary, but as a question mark, alive and insistent. And so the stage was set. Two philosophies of power, two definitions of communication, hurtling toward each other in the chaotic theater of a New Hampshire press scrum. The atmosphere was electric, a low-grade static of anticipation. You could taste the ambition in the air, thick and metallic. For a seasoned reporter, this was just another Tuesday. For Nathan Traoré, it was everything. He navigated the crush of bodies, a small boat in a turbulent ocean of bigger, more established vessels. He could feel the familiar pang of insignificance, the fight to be seen, to be heard, over the booming voices of network correspondents. Every journalist in that room was an island of their own ambition, shouting into the wind, hoping for a response. He watched Karoline Leavitt, a figure of calm authority in the eye of the hurricane she commanded. He saw the practiced ease with which she parried questions, the way she could smile while shutting down a line of inquiry, the subtle, almost invisible shifts in her posture that communicated absolute control. He studied her, not with resentment, but with the focused attention of a student. This was the game. And he was here to play. He rehearsed the question in his mind, the words becoming smooth, familiar. He waited for a gap, a fractional pause in the barrage, a moment to make his move. It was a game of inches, of milliseconds. He saw an opening, a slight lull. He took a breath, the stale, recycled air of the room filling his lungs. This was it. He raised his voice, projecting from his diaphragm the way he'd practiced, infusing his tone with a politeness that belied the fierceness of his intent. "Karoline," he began, his voice clear, distinct from the surrounding din. He got the first few words of his question out. It was a legitimate question, pointed but professional, the kind of question a press secretary is paid to handle. For a split second he had broken through. He had captured the attention of the lighthouse. And then the beam turned on him, not to illuminate, but to extinguish. Her head snapped toward him. Her eyes, which had been scanning the room with a practiced air of command, narrowed. The shift was instantaneous. The professional mask dropped for a fraction of a second, revealing a flash of pure, unadulterated annoyance. The intruder, the anomaly, the unsanctioned voice. Her own voice, when it came, was not loud. It didn't need to be. It was low, sharp, and laden with the full weight of her authority. "Sit down." Time seemed to warp. The two words hung in the air, vibrating with an invisible energy. Sit down. It wasn't a request. It was a command from a superior to a subordinate. It was the verbal equivalent of a dismissive hand wave. It was designed to do one thing and one thing only, to communicate to him and to everyone else watching that he was irrelevant, that his question was irrelevant, that his presence was an inconvenience. In that moment, he wasn't a journalist. He wasn't a citizen. He was a child who had spoken out of turn. The collective energy of the room shifted. A subtle, unified cringe. The other reporters, for a moment, stopped being his competitors and became his fellow travelers in a profession that had just been publicly slapped. The camera operators instinctively tightened their focus on his face, sensing that this was the real story. The silent, shared intake of breath. The unspoken thought hanging in the air. What will he do now? This was more than just a brush-off. It was a public shaming, a test of will, played out under the hot, bright lights of political theater. Before we see how he responded, before the internet exploded, let's pause right here in this moment of raw tension. This is a moment we have all faced in some form. The moment someone tries to make you feel small, to put you back in your box. If you believe in the power of refusing to be diminished, if you believe in the strength of quiet dignity, then take a second to hit that subscribe button. You're not just subscribing to a channel, you're joining a community that understands that your real power is shown when you're told to sit down and you choose to stand. Now, let's go inside Nathan Traoré's mind in that frozen, infinite second. The first thing that hits is the sting. A hot, sharp needle of humiliation. It's a primal reaction. The feeling of being singled out, of being publicly put in your place. The blood rushes to his ears. The background noise of the room fades into a dull roar. For a nanosecond, the instinct to obey is powerful. The instinct to shrink, to nod, to melt back into the anonymity of the crowd. It would be the easy path. The path of least resistance. It's what most people would do. It's what the command was designed to produce. But then, something else kicks in. A different voice, quieter but more persistent than the sharp command that still hangs in the air. It's the voice of his purpose. The voice of the late-night studying. The voice of the principles he holds dear. The voice that reminds him why he is here. He isn't here for his own ego. He is here to ask a question. He is here to do his job. The public humiliation is a distraction. The command is an obstacle. It is not the final word. He feels the eyes of the room on him, feels the weight of the camera lens like a physical pressure. But instead of crushing him, it focuses him. He realizes, in a moment of stunning clarity, that this is no longer just about his question. This is about his right to ask the question. He takes a breath. Not a shaky, nervous breath, but a slow, deliberate one. It's a centering breath. It's an act of taking back control of the one thing he has absolute power over, himself. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't look intimidated. He looks determined. The initial sting of humiliation recedes, replaced by a cool, calm resolve. He is not going to engage in a battle of wills on her terms. He is not going to shout back. He is not going to make a scene. He is simply going to ignore the command as if it were an irrelevant piece of static. He is going to treat it with the same dismissiveness with which it was delivered to him. He will not be erased. He will not sit down. His comeback was not a witty retort. It was not a blistering condemnation. His comeback was the quiet, unshakable continuation of his purpose. He held Karoline Leavitt's gaze, not with defiance, but with a steady, professional focus. And then he simply continued. He calmly, clearly, and at the same volume as before, started his question again from the beginning. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't stumble. He just proceeded. The effect was electrifying. It was a masterclass in nonviolent resistance. It was a stunning display of what true power looks like. In that moment, the power dynamics of the entire room inverted. The command to sit down was left hanging in the air, impotent and absurd. The person who had tried to wield power like a club had missed, and the intended victim had not even flinched. By refusing to acknowledge the insult, Traoré had rendered it meaningless. By simply continuing to do his job, he had shown everyone in the room, and everyone who would later watch the clip, that his dignity was not something that could be taken from him. It was inherent. It was his. The sheer audacity of his calmness was the most powerful weapon imaginable. It wasn't a counterattack, it was a refusal to be a part of the battle. He was operating on a different plane, one governed by professionalism and self-respect. Karoline Leavitt was momentarily stunned. She had expected compliance or perhaps an angry outburst. She was prepared for either. She was not prepared for this. She was not prepared for quiet, dignified persistence. She was not prepared for someone to simply refuse to accept the reality she had tried to impose. In his calm continuation, Nathan Traoré had won. He had held his ground. He had stood. And the world was about to take notice. It started, as these things do, with a single clip. A short, grainy video uploaded to the internet, probably by another journalist in the room who knew they had just witnessed something special. At first, it was just a ripple. A few dozen retweets. 100 likes. The title was simple, something like, Trump Press SEC tells student journalists to sit down. But the video contained a power that transcended its grainy quality. It contained a universal drama. Within an hour, it was no longer a ripple. It was a wave. People weren't just watching it, they were feeling it. They shared it with captions like, "This is how you handle a bully. The classiest comeback I've ever seen. This kid is my new hero." The internet, so often a forum for rage and division, had found a moment of rare, unifying clarity. Everyone, regardless of their political affiliation, could recognize the core human drama, the powerful trying to silence the powerless, and the powerless refusing to be silenced. The wave became a tsunami. The view count exploded. Hundreds of thousands. Then millions. It was everywhere. News outlets, starved for a human interest story in a vitriolic political climate, picked it up. Headlines that had been about policy and polls were suddenly about dignity and respect. Student journalist praised for calm response to dismissive command. Who is Nathan Traoré? The reporter who wouldn't sit down. What was it about this specific moment that resonated so deeply? It was because Nathan Traoré became a stand-in for everyone who had ever been talked over in a meeting. For everyone who had been dismissed by a boss, a condescending official, or an arrogant stranger. For everyone who had felt the sting of being told, in one way or another, that their voice didn't matter. In his quiet act of defiance, they felt a vicarious victory. His win was their win. His validation was their validation. He had done what they had all wished they had the courage to do in their own moments of trial. He had faced down casual cruelty not with more cruelty, but with an unshakable sense of self-worth. The comment sections became a global testament to this shared experience. Stories poured in. My boss did this to me last week. I wish I had this kid's poise. As a teacher, I see this kind of power play all the time. This should be shown in schools. This isn't about politics. This is about human decency. The moment had transcended its origins. It was no longer a political story. It was a human story. The symbolism of the act was potent and layered. The command, "sit down," was more than just words. It was a metaphor for a system that often demands conformity and silence. It was the voice of entrenched power telling the newcomer to know their place. Nathan Traoré, by remaining on his feet, became a living symbol of resilience. He was the free press, refusing to be muzzled. He was youth, refusing to be intimidated by the establishment. He was the individual, asserting his dignity against the machine. The simple physical act of standing versus sitting became a profound visual representation of the entire conflict. He didn't just hold his ground, he embodied it. This moment served as a powerful reminder of a fundamental truth: your response is your power. The world can throw insults, commands, and dismissiveness at you, but it cannot dictate your reaction. That space between stimulus and response, that is where your freedom lies. If this idea resonates with you, if you believe that mastering that space is the key to a stronger life, then take a moment to hit the like button. It's a small click, but it helps this message of empowerment reach someone else who might be facing their own command to sit down today. And stick with us, because understanding why this worked is the key to making it work for you. So let's dissect the lesson. Let's look beneath the surface of the viral moment and understand the profound moral core that gave it such enduring power. What we witnessed was not just a clever comeback. It was a collision of two fundamentally different philosophies of power. On one side, we saw power defined as dominance. A top-down, authoritarian model where strength is demonstrated by the ability to control, to command, and to silence others. It's a power that is loud, brittle, and requires constant external validation. It functions by making others feel small. Karoline Leavitt, in that moment, was the perfect embodiment of this philosophy. Her tool was the imperative command. Her goal was compliance. Her failure was exposed when compliance was not given. On the other side, we saw a completely different model of power. A power defined as integrity. This is an internal, foundational strength that is not dependent on titles, status, or the obedience of others. It is quiet, flexible, and self-sustaining. It isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling oneself. Its strength is demonstrated not by silencing dissent, but by maintaining one's own convictions in the face of it. Nathan Traoré became the living symbol of this philosophy. His tool was his own professionalism. His goal was to fulfill his purpose. His victory was achieved the moment he decided not to be thrown off course, regardless of the outcome. This is the great, powerful message of the entire event. True, lasting strength is not the ability to shout, "Sit down." It is the quiet, internal fortitude that allows you to remain standing when you are told to. It's a power that cannot be given or taken away by anyone else. It is forged in character. It is polished by adversity. The consequences of that day unfolded exactly as one might expect from this lesson. For Karoline Leavitt, the moment became a defining, though perhaps unwelcome, part of her public persona. It became a shorthand example of a certain type of political discourse, a footnote that would be forever attached to her name. It was a brief, public glimpse behind the curtain of professional messaging, and the world drew its own conclusions. Her power, based on dominance, was shown to have limits. It was effective only on those who chose to accept its premise. For Nathan Traoré, the opposite happened. The moment wasn't a footnote, it was a launchpad. He didn't become famous for being aggressive or for a witty insult. He became famous for his character. He earned a form of currency that is far more valuable and enduring than any single news cycle: respect. He was praised by veteran journalists, by public figures, by ordinary people across the globe. He had demonstrated on a national stage that he possessed the single most important quality for a journalist, and indeed for any human being: an unshakable core of personal and professional integrity. His power, based on that integrity, had been tested and proven to be stronger than the dismissive command of the establishment. His future was not defined by the person who tried to silence him, but by his own profound response. This story, ultimately, is not about politics. It is a timeless parable for our modern age. It's a reminder that in a world that grows increasingly loud, chaotic, and dismissive, the quiet virtues of dignity, professionalism, and self-respect have become more powerful than ever. It teaches us that the loudest voice in the room is not always the strongest, and that sometimes, the most revolutionary act is to simply stand your ground, calmly and without apology, and continue to speak your truth. It's a lesson that applies to every boardroom, every classroom, every family dinner table, every interaction where we are challenged or dismissed. You cannot control what others say to you. You can only control your response. And in that response lies your honor, your dignity, and your true, unassailable power. The story of Nathan Traoré and the command he so gracefully defied should not be just a fleeting, viral memory. It should be a principle we carry with us. It is a blueprint for resilience. It is a masterclass in emotional control. It is proof that character is and always will be the ultimate comeback. Don't let this just be an inspirational story you heard one afternoon. Let it become a part of your personal toolkit, a reminder of the quiet strength you hold within you. To go deeper, to get exclusive access to detailed breakdowns of other powerful moments in history, and to learn the psychological frameworks of resilience that people like Nathan Traoré instinctively use, click the link in the description and become an insider. This isn't just about more content, it's about gaining access to a library of knowledge that can fundamentally change how you face your next challenge, your next dismissal, your next command to sit down. Don't miss out on the strategies and stories that can empower you. Subscribe now and carry this strength with you, always ready to stand your ground.